This week, we're looking at the ethics of voluntary active euthanasia. What is euthanasia? Euthanasia involves cases in which a person takes the life of another person for the sake of that person. Death is in some sense in the interests of the person. This helps to distinguish euthanasia cases from cases we would ordinarily consider as murder. In standard voluntary active euthanasia cases, a mentally competent person who is suffering unbearably makes a reflective decision to die, usually by lethal injection or a lethal dose of medicine. There are two arguments in favour of voluntary active euthanasia. The first, put forward by moral liberals, is the autonomy argument. The autonomy argument says that mentally competent persons ought to be able to choose the time of their own dying. It is unjust and unfair to impose on them an end of life that they did not choose. The second argument is the mercy argument. The mercy argument says that a person in unremitting pain ought to be allowed to die in order to be relieved of that pain. It is unmerciful to deny them that opportunity, and it is merciful to allow them to end their own life. There are two arguments against voluntary active euthanasia. The first argument is a religious argument that says allowing voluntary active euthanasia violates a principle that only God can take life. This principle is regarded as authoritatively established. The second argument is a slippery slope argument, to the effect that if we allow voluntary active euthanasia, we'll be on a slippery slope towards involuntary active euthanasia. It is possible to empirically verify this argument because voluntary active euthanasia has been law in a number of countries around the world and a number of states of America. It is also now available in Australia in all states, but not the territories. An important distinction in this debate is between killing and letting die. Is it worse to intentionally kill somebody than intentionally allowing them to die when you could have prevented their death? This is a distinction that James Rochelle's draws attention to in his famous Smith and Jones thought experiment. Two men, Smith and Jones, both stand to gain from the death of their young cousin. Smith sneaks into the bathroom and intentionally drowns his cousin. Jones intends to drown his cousin, goes into the bathroom, the cousin slips and is under the water drowning, and Jones fails to save his cousin. Given that both men have the same intention, and given also that the result is the same in each case, Rochelle argues that there is no moral difference between killing and letting die. The only difference is that one intentionally and actively killed the cousin, and the other refrained from doing so and allowed the cousin to die. Rochelle wants us to think that the Smith and Jones case is analogous to situations of end-of-life decision-making in hospitals. When a patient has a terminal illness and cannot be helped and their pain cannot be relieved, the decision is made for the patient to be allowed to die. They are given morphine and die over a number of days. But if, as Rochelle's case suggests, there is no moral difference between allowing to die and killing, then doctors ought to be allowed to administer a lethal injection in order to spare the patient what could be many days of suffering. The intention is the same, Rochelle argues, to bring the patient's life to an end, and the outcome is the same. The patient dies. Opponents of voluntary active euthanasia argue the Smith and Jones case is not helpful for for determining the ethics of end-of-life decision-making in hospitals, because the intention of the doctors in that case is very different from the intention of Smith and Jones. While Smith and Jones have a malicious motive and intend their cousin to die, in hospital contexts, doctors act in the interests of the patient and do not intend the death of the patient, but rather their intention is for the patient to be made comfortable and to be allowed to die peacefully. It is a matter of philosophical controversy whether a person who foresees an outcome also intends that outcome. Doctors argue that they foresee the patient to die, they are not intending for the patients to die. A consequentialist, however, may draw no distinction between intending and foreseeing an outcome. All that matters is the outcome and whether a person was able to bring that outcome about or not.